In this video, I'm going to show you how to work with your Mixamo character in Unity and get them set up so that you can start animating. The first step is to obviously open up Unity. Now I like to have my windows set up like this where I can see everything that I need straight up. So I have my scene view here, I have my game view here, my hierarchy, my inspector, and the project down the bottom. You might prefer to have a different setup, but if you're following along and you're doing this for the first time, it's probably best that you arrange your windows like I've got them so it's easier for you to follow. Right, so the first thing we need to do is to bring in our character. So I've downloaded my JT model and it's in a folder. You want to bring the entire folder. I keep it on my desktop, bring it all the way in and drop it in the assets folder inside the project window. That will unpack it all for you. And you may get a little error pop up asking you to fix the normals, which is a texture thing. So we can go fix now. You can ignore it as well, but it's a problem that will keep coming back up again. Right, now when I did this, I got this sort of null reference error here, which is probably nothing, so I've just cleared that. I'm not sure what it is because there's no code in here at all, so it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so we've opened up this, and inside this JT file, you'll be able to see you've got a model called JT at the top. That's your main model with your textures and everything on it. Then underneath that, you'll see a list of all of those dance moves and other animations that were added. And then right at the bottom, there's a materials folder. If you just open that materials folder, you'll be able to see the different textures that have been added to your character. So there's the shoes, for example. If we just make this a little bit bigger, you can see that this is obviously the shoe. There's the sole and the laces that are added. Okay, so let's go back to JT. Now we're going to bring JT model into the scene. So we just grab hold of the one that's at the top, doesn't have the animations, just this one, and drop it in the scene. Now, if we zoom in on that, if you hit F while it's selected, it will actually focus it into the center. Now, you can immediately see that we have a big problem with the textures. So hit this, you can see the eyeballs, the skin on the face is sort of see-through. If we go back to the arms, they look a bit weird as well and they disappear. Now that is an incompatibility problem with the material types between Mixamo and Unity in this case. Now don't panic, this is actually quite easy to fix and it's the first thing that you'll have to fix. So go to the hierarchy and select JT, then drop down the little triangle next to it. You want to find the parts of the model that have the textures attached, and you'll see which ones do because when you select them, they'll have a shader in the inspector. So these are your textures that are attached. Now the ones that have textures are usually all of these ones. The one with hips on it is actually your skeleton, so it won't have a shader on it. So select body, come down to the shader. Now instead of standard, we're going to go legacy shader. Now you can't see this because it's off the screen. Let me just adjust that for you. And we'll go standard, legacy shader, and let's go with diffuse. Okay, you can see that the face is now looking far more normal than it did before. And then we go to bottoms, legacy shader, diffuse. Default, which is already set. Some of them do use the same material and therefore they will automatically switch over when you change one of the others. But you can't guarantee on all of them. So let's just go down to diffuse, shoes, legacy, diffuse, top. Okay, now the model looks a lot better. Now within each of these things, so let's say we want to look at the top, you can drop down the shader type and actually change some of the settings in here if you want to. If you want something that's a bit better than a diffuse shader, say on his top, let's have a look what else we've got the options of having. We could have a bumped specular, and you can see that that's now put some shine on there and pulled out the bump mapped images, which is the creases in that shirt. So that actually does look a bit better. So have a little play around with the different shaders for the different effects. We might actually put that on his pants as well. Legacy bumped specular. And you can change the shininess in here. See the detail in the textures on those pants. The next thing you're going to do is link up the animations with the model. So currently they're all separated because you've got the model file and then you've got all of these animations, but you haven't told the model which animations to play. Now to do that, we need to create what's called an animation controller. But before we do that, I'm going to set the main camera to look at what's in the scene, which is our character. Because once we open the animator, we're going to lose the real estate of this scene view. So select your main camera. Make the scene look the way you want it. Okay, so I want it to look like this. I want the camera to be looking at the same thing that the scene is. Select the camera, go Game Object from the main menu and Align with View. That will always make the camera snap to the view that's going on in the scene. To create your animation controller, in the project window, select Create and then go down to Animation Controller, which is slightly off the screen. Bring this up for you. And there it is, Animation Controller, or Animator Controller, I should say. Select that and it will create, right at the bottom, a new animator controller. Now you can click on that and change the name. So let's call it JT controller, because you might end up with a few of these, so you want them named a bit differently. Now what you're going to do with that controller is actually add it to your model that's in the scene. Go to the hierarchy and select JT, or your character. And in the inspector, you'll see that there's an animator added to it. Now, this is the component doing all the animation work and controlling it, but it needs to know which controller to use. And that's the one we just created. So grab JT from your JT folder down in the project and drag it all the way over and drop it in to this controller spot on the animator for your character. Now you can double click on the controller in the assets. You can also actually double click on it if you've got your model selected from here in the animator. You can double click and it will come up in the view where the scene is, because I had my animation tab behind the scene view. So this is the area where you can set the animation state of your character. Now if we go down through the list, find one of these animations that you like. So let's pick the singing one and drag and drop it into the animator view. It's going to go orange, the first one that you add, and that means it's the default animation that's going to play on your character when you press play in Unity. Before we do that, let's just zoom the camera out so we can see the whole animation as it plays, so he doesn't go outside of the camera view, and press play. And you can see the animation playing. You can see the progression of the animation as well by this blue line. And when it gets to the end, he will stop. Before I finish this tutorial, I just want to show you a few extra little things. First of all, with the singing animation, let's say you want it to be faster. So you select it in the animator, and then over in the inspector you'll find there's a speed setting. So we can actually speed that up. Let's put it at 5 and then press play. And you'll see that it runs a lot quicker. So you don't have to only control the settings of the animation in Mixamo, you also have control once you've got into Unity. Now, if you want to transition this singing to another animation, then let's say we want to do house dancing. Let's just drag that into here. We need to transition from singing to house dancing. To do that, we right click on singing and go make transition. That'll give you a little arrow to move around. You want to snap it and click it on the house dancing. Now when we press play, you can see that he'll play through the singing and then go straight into the house dancing. And you can make a long string of these if you want to make a dance sequence up in this way. Now finally, what I'll show you is if I click on house dancing, let's speed that up as well. We press play again. It's going to do the singing bit and then come back to house dancing. And then once it gets to the end, it will stop. If you want it to go back to singing, you could click make transition and go back there. And then you'd end up with a loop going around. But what if you want to loop the house dancing so he just continues to do that? Okay, to do it, you'll need to find that house dancing clip in the project. Select it. Then over in the inspector, you'll find a whole bunch of settings that you can set for your animations. But if you click on the animation section and just go down a bit, you'll find something called loop time. And that's what you want to tick, then hit apply. And that will make that particular animation, just the house dancing, loop over and over again. So now when we run it, it'll do singing, it'll transition to house dancing, but when it reaches the end of house dancing, he will just continue and it will go on forever and ever until you stop it or tell it to do something else. Okay, so that's the basics of the animator in Unity. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. For more tutorials on animating with Unity, pick up a coupon for my Udemy courses at this address.